Hey everyone, this is Stacy, and today I have a video as a reaction to something that just happened recently in the Christian community. Those of you who are familiar with John MacArthur is a great pastor. He's written many books. Many of my favorite books are written by him. He has a great church, and he has done a lot for the ministry. Now, unfortunately, though, John MacArthur has, because he is seen as a great leader, people see him almost as God. And I'm not saying that he is God, but a lot of times when he says something, people automatically think that anything he says is correct, that he doesn't get it wrong ever, right? Now, I am not here to judge John MacArthur. I know he has his own convictions based off of where he is in his walk. However, I was very disappointed in the actions that he and his church decided to do. So those of you who are not familiar, John MacArthur is in California. And the governor in California has stated that churches are not allowed to meet. And John MacArthur decided to go against the governor's decision and said that, the chances of someone actually dying from the coronavirus is very low. And because of that, that the church should be allowed to meet together. And so he was saying in this interview, which I'll have posted down below so you can refer to it, but he was saying that pretty much that people are trying to scare the church into not going to church anymore in fear that they're going to get the coronavirus. And he was saying that, that it's all pretty much just a thing to get people to stop going to church, right? And he said that in his church that they decided that, it's against their constitutional right, and that as an American, they have the right to meet together, and that the government can't do anything to go against that unless there's some type of pestilence or something that's going on, which I don't understand why he doesn't think this pandemic is a pestilence. I think the problem is, he said that it's a 0.02% or something like that. I don't remember the exact statistics that he said for their state that are actually dying from the coronavirus. I am not familiar with all the numbers at every single state and who has a high number and who has a low number. I don't know, okay? But what I do know is that the coronavirus can cause death, and the death numbers are still going up, okay? And to act like it's not a big deal if somebody gets the virus or not, I think it's very dangerous, because if by saying that it's not a big deal, you'll have people come to church, they might have coronavirus, they might not, they go to church, and you're painting this picture of, oh, it's not a big deal if they pass it to someone else. Because if they pass it to someone else, they might die, they might not die. More likely they're not going to die. 99% chance they're not going to die. But let's not forget the fact that they might still end up being hospitalized and have a huge medical bill as a result of the virus. Let's not think about that. Let's just talk about the death aspect. And, since there are not going to be that many people that die, then we should meet. That logic to me doesn't make sense, because I understand that the percentages might be low for his state, but that does not mean that that small percentage of people is not still a big number of people dying, right? Like, if you have a congregation of 1,000 people and one person died from the coronavirus, but you still have a large percentage of people that still had very bad symptoms. Some of them had to be hospitalized. To me, it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand. And I think, it was very foolish. He was saying, this is just my opinion, okay, my opinion, all right? He was saying that they were going to church without wearing masks, that they weren't giving into this whole thing, and they were going without fear of he said that this all has to do with fear. Me wearing a mask, I'm not wearing a mask because I'm afraid. I wear a mask because I'm trying to be a good citizen. We know the science behind wearing a mask. And if I happen to have the virus, I don't think I could be of good conscience if I knew that I had the virus and I just so happened to give it to somebody and that person dies. Now, yes, it is a small percentage of people that might actually die. But let's see where those percentages are, okay? John MacArthur, if you're watching this, you need to take into account people's demographics, okay? Find in your church, in your area where you're at, it might have a lot of white people. It might have a lot of people who go to your church that are well off. I don't know. I don't know your church. I don't go to your church. But I do know that in other parts of the United States, the demographics are very different, okay? And, there's a lot of African Americans that follow you. There's a lot of African Americans that listen to your sermons, that read your books, and are enlightened by things that you teach. And so when you say comments like that, it's before. I don't think John MacArthur realizes how offensive it is. I can just speak for myself. Yes, I've known people who got the coronavirus. I had 3 people in my family that died from the coronavirus out of all the people that I knew in my family that got coronavirus. Okay? And that was half of the people. So half of the people in my family that I know as of right now that had gotten coronavirus had died of it. Okay? So to act like it's not a big deal or anything like that, like, for me, it's offensive. Because, yeah, the percentage might be low there, but in other places, it's not low. People are dying. The percentages are high, okay? And it does matter if they wear a mask or not, okay? Now, this idea that the only way that a church can be a church is if they meet on Sunday is ridiculous to me, because you know what? The church has always undergone persecution for years. Okay, the apostles, many other people who were martyrs were thrown into prison. They weren't able to go to church on Sundays. Did they sin by not going to church on Sunday? No, they were in prison, right? In other places, you go to China, they can't actually go to church. They go to people's houses and meet in those capacities. There's people around the world that literally, they have no option in this. They cannot meet with their church at all. There's people who are Christians and they're literally going through their life without going to church, because if they go to church, they will die. This is happening all over the world. Are they a sinner for not going to church? Are they living in fear because they decide that they're not going to meet because at that particular point in time they knew that it's not safe for them to meet? No, they're not a sinner. Okay, you look at the areas where you're at, you look at the situation where it's happening, what's happening where you're at, and it does not mean you're a sinner if you don't go. Okay, I think this idea of the only way the church is a church is if you meet together, that's ridiculous. The church is a living thing. It's not a building where people meet together. There's people who are watching this video right now that are part of the church. There's people who are by themselves. They're the only person in their family that's a Christian. And guess what? They're part of the church. Not everyone that goes to church on Sunday is actually a part of the church too, right? So there's people that go on Sunday and they're not even a part of the church. Okay? So this whole idea that you have to meet on Sunday, which, by the way, there's no commandment that says that we have to meet on Sunday. That's not a commandment anywhere. There's no commandment that says that it says do not neglect the fellowship, among believers, yes, but that doesn't mean you have to go to a church building to do that. And, you have to just go to a church building to feel like you're a part of the church. In my opinion, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Because the church body is supposed to be out there in the world to begin with, okay? And, I will say for myself, yes, I understand. It's sad not being able to be among other people. I do miss seeing people in my church. I miss seeing my family. I do. I miss them all. But I know that I'm still connected with them. We have small groups via, webcam. And we do Bible study via webcam. And I feel so connected with them. We've been growing still spiritually in this pandemic. And a lot of churches, they still offer that. They offer small group options. So if people really want to be a part, they have an option to be a part still. All right. Now, I understand some people, they don't feel comfortable around certain groups. For me, I never was into small groups where you had to go to people's houses. I always felt uncomfortable. I'm an introvert. I only want to go to your house if I know you, and to be in an intimate space like that for me that's hard. Well, nowadays you have no excuse, because if you do a small group, you're doing it from your own home through the internet, right? So it's not about I don't feel comfortable being in someone's environment that's not my own environment type thing, right? And even if you don't have that, you might have a group of friends that are Christians that you can converse with. You might have, there's so many different communities online now that you can be a part of, where you can communicate back and forth with and gain that sense of fellowship that you need. Okay? It is your job as a believer to make sure you have that fellowship. That is your job. When you talked about do not neglect the fellowship among believers, he's talking to the specific individual. He's not talking to the pastor, making sure that, okay, let's have church so that way people can have fellowship. No. You have the responsibility among yourself to make sure that you are fellowshipping with other believers. Okay? So I just had to say that because it's very frustrating, because people will see John MacArthur's video and they're going to automatically think, just because he is a great pastor, and I agree with a lot of his teachings, I think he is a great pastor, but you cannot just automatically assume that everything that a pastor says is accurate and that he doesn't make mistakes, okay? And in my opinion, I think this is a big mistake. The thought that people cannot get coronavirus in church, it just does not make sense to me. And I just pray to God that John MacArthur does not get coronavirus in the midst of this. Because, you know what? I know of a church that actually had a spread of coronavirus that occurred. Okay? They did not want to neglect the fellowship. They used that as a means. And they met together. And guess what? People ended up getting coronavirus. A lot of people in the church got coronavirus. It wasn't a few, it was a lot that got it. And then we also know of the other examples that have hit the news. Okay, there's a lot of examples. Not everything is made known worldwide and made known across the nation whenever there's a coronavirus outbreak. Now it's so frequent that you don't hear about it. But yes, people do get sick from coronavirus when they go to church. No, not every church gets an outbreak. Yes, I understand that there are times when people go to church and they're fine. But I will not sit here and say that particular church that doesn't have an outbreak has more faith or is more religious or more Christian or has it better together than another church over here that ended up having an outbreak. You know, for you to say this church had an outbreak because they didn't have faith in God, or they, I will not say that. I think that God gives us wisdom. I think God shows us that this virus can kill, and that this virus can spread easily. And just because now we have an improvement in the medical field, medical facilities, that does not mean it does not come with a lot of cost. Does not mean it comes with a lot of hours, does not come with a lot of hours of work and heartache from our medical healthcare workers. It does not mean that there's people who are suffering and have symptoms even after coronavirus. I was just talking to someone today, speaking about how even though they had coronavirus and they're done with it, guess what? They still have symptoms. They still have problems after the coronavirus. Why would you put yourself at risk like that? If you have to just go to a church building in order to have fellowship, in order to grow, in order for you to feel as though this is part of who you are, you really need to ask yourself what your true identity is. The first believers didn't have a church. Abraham, Adam and Eve, Noah, they didn't have a church. They did church with their family, at their house. That's where church started. Among your family, at your house. If you can't have church at your house, if you can't have church among your own family members, then when you're going to church, that's not real church. If you can't have a real church, if you cannot pray together, worship together, read the Bible together in your family, then how are you going to do that in the church? Now, understand some people don't have family, or they might be the only person that's saved in their house. But I'm talking about these people who actually have a family at home. If you can't have church at home, like how they did in the old days before there was actually church, and it's the end of the world for you that you have to go to church, I don't know. Now, that's just my opinion. I'm not trying to judge you if you're someone that goes to church. I have a lot of friends that are Christian that are going to church. And I'm sorry if you're watching this and you're offended by this. But I want you to ask yourself, first and foremost, do you have family members or friends that got coronavirus? And do you have people in your life that died of it? I had family members that had the virus, and I had family members that had the virus and died. And so my perspective is very different. A lot of my family members are Christians. They're believers. They have faith in God. They trust in God. And I will not say that they got coronavirus because they didn't have faith and they didn't trust God. I will not say that. I would not put that judgment on them. But I do think that God gives us wisdom. I'm reminded of a story in Maccabees. Now, I know not everybody reads Maccabees, but Maccabees was actually in the original Hebrew Bible. And the Israelites, they were called Jews at this point. Their name got changed to the Jews, which we know of Jews today. They were celebrating the Sabbath. On the Sabbath, they did no work. Well, they had enemies that knew that that is something that they did on the Sabbath. That was their religious law, that you do not work on the Sabbath. And so guess what? They had an advantage over them. And so they went and they attacked them on the Sabbath. And those Jews would not fight them back because they said they cannot work on the Sabbath. So guess what? A lot of them died. A lot of them died on that day. Were they wrong? They were a little foolish, apparently. And they learned that they were foolish. And guess what? There was another Sabbath that came later with another enemy that came, and their leader, Jonathan, at this time said, you know what? I know it's the Sabbath, but it does not make sense for you not to work and allow yourself to die. So we will fight on the Sabbath. And not only did he fight on the Sabbath, but he prayed to God that God would help them. And God answered, and God helped them, and they won. Okay? If it was that bad, if it was so much of set in stone, God wouldn't have, first of all, let people die on the Sabbath. And second of all, wouldn't have helped save them on the Sabbath when they went to war. My point is that God gives us wisdom in the situations that we're in. And you use that wisdom to help you through your certain situations. We have medical healthcare professionals that are showing us what we should be doing to avoid these congregations together. And so, a church is a congregation. It's a gathering of people. And we know that it can spread at church because it has happened already. And we also know that people can die from this. And yes, it might be only a small percentage of people of everyone who gets the virus that dies, but we still have more deaths from this virus alone than we did of the flu. Okay? And people are still dying. It has not even been a year. Okay? If you want to gamble and go ahead and go to church, go ahead. You have that right. But I know many people who have gone to church and regretted going to church once they got diagnosed with the coronavirus. And so, I'm just throwing that out there for you. John MacArthur, I understand you have convictions. I understand that there's a constitutional right. But the Constitution is not God. It's just not. You can't use the Constitution as a basis of common sense. You just can't. So, that's all I have. I know that many of you guys might be commenting and you're going to disagree with me, and that's perfectly fine. If you feel fine with going to church, go to church. If you feel fine with spreading coronavirus, go ahead. You will be held accountable for your actions, just like I will be held accountable for mine. I'd rather play it safe. I don't live in fear. I have no fear. I'm not afraid. Just because I wear a mask does not mean I'm afraid. Just because I choose not to go to church does not mean I'm afraid. If anything, I feel like I'm at least likely of actually getting sick and dying from it. I feel like I'd probably be asymptomatic, right? But even if that's not the case, I do it because I'm trying to be a good citizen and help prevent the spread of the virus and not cause anyone to die. Really, I don't want to be the cause of anyone's death. That's really what it boils down to. And, I know that it doesn't take much. I am willing to be patient. Are you? So, that's all I have. Again, I'll link down below the original interview where he's talking about this so you can watch it. It's a long 39-minute or something like that interview, and you can watch it and get his opinion on it. You don't have to take mine, but that is all I have for you guys today. Stay safe out there. Use wisdom. Listen to the Holy Spirit, whatever convictions you have. I'll talk to y'all next time. Bye.